On this episode is still loading.
Get over here!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today it is a 30th anniversary celebration, something that makes all of us 30-plus-year-olds just feel so young, feel so energetic and vibrant, and not out of date in the slightest, out of touch with what's cool in the slightest. To be fair, though, the game series we are talking about today is still modern and is still relevant because the most recent release was 2019, I want to say, was the most recent game. We are talking about the original, the game that started it off. We are talking about Mortal Kombat. I really had to hold myself back from yelling Mortal Kombat. One, I can't really pull it off. Two, my daughter is asleep in the next room over, and I don't want a screaming infant wondering what's happening, why her father has lost his mind.
Again.
But again, you started it. That's what I tell her every time. Like, you started it. She doesn't understand me, and then I just lose my mind even more. It's a really vicious cyclical cycle. I guess it's redundant, cyclical and cycle.
Those cyclical cycles will get you.
Cyclical cycles. But no, we are here to talk Mortal Kombat, and with me, a true someone who one of my closest friends. He's been on the show numerous times. He's also one of the people I know who's is so incredibly passionate about the series. I had to have him on for this episode. It is Andrew from the Experience Point. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty okay. I thought you were going to say something like, this person knows Mortal Kombat inside and out in ways that shouldn't be ethical or legal and should really seek professional help. But I'll take the intro that you did give me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, if you wanted to make that a Mortal Kombat reference, you could say knows Mortal Kombat inside and out so much that it is his own fatality.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat will be the death of me in a good way.
Well, inside and out. Like, literally, it took the inside of you and turned it outside. That's got to be a fatality somewhere in
that's
this
why
series,
I look
right?
like this.
That's why you look like this. So actually, listeners, you can check out a video version of this podcast over on the Experience Points YouTube channel, which there will be a link in the description, or you can just search the Experience Point all over, like, check on my social media. I'll have links to, and I will tag Andrew in the post for this episode. But yeah, we are here to talk Mortal Kombat, 30th anniversary. The game released initially in arcades on October 8th, 1992. And we were joking around off mic, Andrew, that I was going to list every single release date for all the different consoles. I'm not going to do that. I will at least list the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, just because those are the ones that by and large popularized it for the home consoles. For the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, it released on September 13th, 1993 in North America and Europe. And for Super Nintendo, it released on September 13th, 1993 in North America, October 28th, 93 in Europe, and December 24th, 93 in Japan. So it's all over the place on Super Nintendo, but pretty consistent for Sega. With that said, that's just kind of a brief overview, and actually this episode is coming out the day after its 30th anniversary. This is coming out October 9th. So we have to talk Mortal Kombat, and I asked Andrew on here because, like I said, he is a huge Mortal Kombat fan. Every time I try to think of like some type of word involving Mortal Kombat, I have to think of some weird way to spell it, because Mortal Kombat spells combat with a K. But for some reason in my head, I'm like, he's a huge fan. I was thinking PHAN, like all the Philly sports teams and everything. But
Yeah.
My mind is getting all tangled in with these weird spellings of things. Anyway, that was an unnecessary tangent. So let's move on with the episode.
He's a father now, everyone. Remember that he's a father. He's got dad brain sometimes, and it's okay.
This is
he's
also
running off
my
of 1 hour of sleep.
This is also like my 4th episode in the last 5 days or something like that. So
Sheesh.
I'm a little wiped, to say the least. But
Everybody
no,
sign up for the still loading Patreon so that Josh can take a vacation.
I wish. Actually, but still sign up for the Still Loading Patreon, because the Still Bonding show for the $5 patrons, where me and Erica Gwynn of Monster Madness are going through every James Bond movie 1 month at a time. So there's 3 bonus episodes a month right now for $5 patrons. So anyway, I'll go over the rest of that spiel later on. But in any case, Mortal Kombat, and so hard not to yell at it. Just it's burned into our psyches that we have to do that. Just whisper it.
You just do it
Mortal
quietly.
Kombat. What if you had like Mortal Kombat ASMR? It's like, get over here.
Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear your spine out of your body and beat you to death with it. Is that okay with you?
Fatality. all the different weird things. Anyway, so we're going to start off though with some of our personal memories of Mortal Kombat, and I'm going to start off with mine, not because I normally like to go with my guest first, but I also like to save the best for last. And I'm starting off with mine because there's nothing here. I have very little to no experience with Mortal Kombat. Most of my Mortal Kombat experience was maybe playing it at a friend's house when I was younger, which most kids that I knew didn't even have it, because I grew up in a really Christian neighborhood. And when you have a game that pretty much scared the government into forcing the video game industry to creating the ESRB, most religious parents aren't going to allow you to have that. So I did not have it. I didn't know anyone in my area really that had it. So I didn't really get to experience it as a kid. I would play it a little bit here and there. I actually think I saw the Mortal Kombat movie before I played any of the games, and I loved the movie. I loved that movie.
I still hold that that's the best video game movie of all time.
You know what?
Not just because I love Mortal Kombat.
No, it's a fun movie. Like, objectively, it's not like the best, but it's still like a really fun movie. I was trying to see like, when did it come out? It came out in 95.
95.
And I'm like, if I want to wait for an anniversary, I'd have to wait 3 more years. I don't know if I can wait that long.
Yeah, I did. If you want to check out an episode retrospective that I did, I want to say a couple years ago now, I think it was the 25th anniversary for it. I sat down with some friends over on the Experience Point YouTube, and we talked about it and had a great old time.
The dude who directed that movie, by the way, also directed all the Resident Evil movies.
Yeah,
and the one Monster Hunter movie, and he's married to the star of all those, Mila Jovovich.
Yep. Why do you think she was in every single one?
To be honest, like, because I don't have a lot of affinity for Resident Evil, not because I don't think they're good games. I really haven't played them. I liked the movies, but I also didn't play the game, so I feel like that's probably why I liked the movies. Because
I'm kind of in the same camp.
But
I
anyway,
liked the first 2. I think the first Resident Evil movie is a solid movie. I think still.
I actually liked the first 3. And now, sorry, this is super random, and now I'm looking at Mila Jovovich's like dating history. I don't know. Her first husband was Shawn Andrews. They were married for a year, 92, and it was annulled in 92, so technically less than a year. She was married to Luc Besson, who is like a French film director who did like a lot of like the Fifth Element, which she was in, right? She was in the Fifth Element, right?
She was she was Lilu.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
So she was in that. She only gets roles with her husband's movies. Yeah, no, I shouldn't say that. The reason I always think of him though is I always associate him with like Euro action thrillers, because like he worked on Taken, which is a kind of like, it takes place in Europe and whatnot. And I feel like his production company does a bunch of stuff like that.
Did he do Leon the Professional?
Yes. Yes,
yeah!
he did. Which that's so funny.
That's a problematic movie.
Oh, is it? Oh, geez.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Luc Besson is a problematic director. He's been accused of multiple women of sexual abuse. So
and so in that movie, it's like Jean Reno is like a hitman, and he teaches a very young Natalie Portman. I think it was her first role.
Oh,
To
really?
like be a killer. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, maybe this should have been like a comic or something. Like doing it with real people is just like gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know. Anyway,
We got way off
to
track.
segue,
We went from the Mortal Kombat to Mortal Kombat movie to Paul, the director of Mortal Kombat, to Mila Jovovich, to her problematic ex-husband Luke Besson. This is what you're not paying for, folks. This is free content.
right. Well, here, let me 6
Yes,
degrees
let's
of
hear
Kevin
you.
Bacon and get us
Okay.
back on track. So if we take one step back to Resident Evil Afterlife, Lyndon Ashby, who plays Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat movie, is in that. So then
What?
we're back to Mortal Kombat, and hey, here we are, full circle.
Wow. The small
Yeah.
world, man. But that's pretty. So that's a very roundabout way to show you how little experience I've had with Mortal Kombat. We talked about Luke Besson in my history of Mortal
He
Kombat.
knows so little about Mortal Kombat that we ended up on French action movies.
And problematic Natalie Portman roles. I was about to say Natalie Dortman.
Right.
I don't know what that was all about.
That's her sister.
That's not even a spoonerism. Natalie
Natalie Dortman.
Nortman would be her spoonerized name. Paddly. Okay. Anyway, Andrew, what are your personal experiences with the original Mortal Kombat game and just kind of the franchise in general? We were talking a bit off mic that you were saying you have more memories of other games, and that's fine. Let's talk about specifically this, but also how you kind of got into the series in general.
Yeah. So I'm a total fake fan. The first Mortal Kombat that I got into was Mortal Kombat 2. It was way down the line, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start from day one. I was like one of those bandwagon fans that got on.
I mean, you couldn't have. You would have been
I'm
like,
just
what,
kidding.
3?
Yeah. So, 92?
Yes.
It came out. I was 3 years old. So clearly I didn't play that when it released. But I do have like vague memories of going to like bowling alleys and arcades and stuff, and like seeing it there, seeing like the older kids like playing it. This is when I got a little bit older. But the very first video game I had, like not even, well, I got them both at the same time. First 2 video games I ever got, Sonic 2 and Mortal Kombat 2. I was probably 6 or 7, and like you said, the religious upbringing, like my mom was not having that, because you know by then the second game was out, so all the controversy was like she thought it was the devil and all that fun
full
stuff.
force. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so my uncle, who lived with us at the time, was like, I wanted a Sega, just because I saw it on, you know, those commercials with the blast processing and all that stuff, and I was like, this looks awesome. And I didn't know anything about Mortal Kombat, but I just knew my mom didn't want me to play it, and so he was like, all right, well, I'll get it for myself. So he got a Sega Genesis and Mortal Kombat 2, and was like, all right, well, let's play it. Like, I didn't buy it for you, I bought it for me. And then the reason that like I still love Sub-Zero the most to this day is because when we first started playing, he would play as Sub-Zero and he would annihilate me. And so for some reason in my small child brain, I was like, oh, okay, Sub-Zero is just the best character then. And so when my uncle wasn't home, I would secretly like play Mortal Kombat, and my mom wasn't home. I would play Mortal Kombat as Sub-Zero, and like I got pretty good, and I eventually would beat him as Sub-Zero, and he from then on like wouldn't play with me. So yeah, that's like my first memories of it, was just like playing it with my uncle, like, you know, being sneaky, like we couldn't play it when mom was home because she would yell at him and whatever. And eventually I think she found out, and you know, my mom's she's never gonna watch it, but
what kind
she's
of
kind of a
weird
pushover.
Don't Wake Daddy version of video games is this? Remember that board game,
Right.
Don't Wake Daddy?
Oh yeah, unfortunately I do.
What a weird name for a board game. Let's just be straight up. Like, that's a weird name for a board game. But it just kind of made me think of like, Don't Wake Mommy. Like, she can't find about Mortal Kombat.
Pretty much, because around that time was like I would be like sneakily watching like South Park and like all the other things that, what's weird, I was just telling somebody about this the other day. I was also not allowed to watch like Rugrats on Nickelodeon
Really?
for some reason. I think so. My mom didn't like me watching Rocko's Modern Life either. And I think it was that like kind of ugly, like Ren and Stimpy early
Hmm.
90s art style that she thought it was like an adult show. And I just remember her always saying like, you can't watch that show. Like, oh, that Rugrats show. Oh, the way the kids treat the parents. Oh, it's
The,
awful.
the
Like, it's
the
so
kids actually are
disrespectful.
really good to the parents. It's just the
I
one
know. That's
kid
what I'm
is not.
saying.
Well, so
It's just Angelica.
my cousin wasn't allowed to watch Rugrats because of Angelica, because when she started watching Rugrats, like it's not that her parents wouldn't normally let her, but when she started acting like Angelica. Like
Oh
she
no.
used Angelica as a role model. So her parents like, nope, you can't watch Rugrats because you take it in too much. Like you think that's acceptable. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fair point. That's fair.
Yeah. But eventually, so like my mom's kind of a pushover, which I feel bad saying, but is kind of the truth. Uh, and so she found out, I don't know, she came into the room and my uncle and I were ripping each other's heads off and whatever. And she was just like,
Don't
made like
look
a
at the
big deal
screen,
about it.
mom.
Yeah, right. Mom, no.
Save
But
yourself.
yeah, I came in here to stop him, I promise. He told me if I beat him 10 times in a row, he'd stop playing this game forever, which actually isn't far from the truth because he was like, man, this kid's beating me all the time. I'm not playing this anymore.
Oh
But
my.
yeah, it was like that era of, and we can talk about this later or now or whatever, but like that era of like, it was before the internet, so everything in these games was like if you weren't playing on the arcade where it had the moves listed out for you, you just had to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So suddenly you're just like, oh, I just I froze this guy, or like I shot this like the harpoon out as Scorpion, or like fireballs as Liu Kang, whatever. And like when you lucked into a fatality, that's what like cemented it in for me, because I'm sure most people have the same thing. Seeing like there were violent video games, but like this game was just on another level, like partially because of the digitized actors and how it like looked
Hmm.
so real. Even though like if you go back to like the original Mortal Kombat fatalities,
It's
they're
not like, yeah,
so mild.
it's so
Yeah.
tame compared to what's in, because everything's so like comically cartoonish looking.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like lucking into fatalities and stuff. Oh, so what I'll say is eventually I got so hooked on Mortal Kombat playing the second one. I loved it. 3 hadn't come out yet, but it was about to. And so my uncle took me to Funko Land one time, which was like an old video game store. I think they got bought
R.I.P.
by EB Games or Electronics
Something like
Boutique,
that.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
became EB Games. Yeah, RIP Funko Land. That was my jam. And I was like, "There's another Mortal Kombat." I don't know why I didn't realize like Mortal Kombat 2 wasn't the first game. There's another one. That's awesome. And so we got we picked up that one, and it hurts me to say it, but it's hard to go back. Like after the second one, like that much bigger
Yeah.
roster, much more interesting, like levels and stuff, more story, more like variety of characters. It's hard to go back to that first one. It's a little bit sluggish, but for the importance of what it was, I still was just like, yeah, it's cool to play these crazy characters and like do the special moves and stuff. But I I honestly didn't play it all that much. Like I just kept going back to 2 because that was like the one for me. Like it was the better one. Even when 3 came out, like I love that. I played it to death, but I always still to this day like we'll go back to 2. Like it just holds so much of a special place in my heart.
Well, eventually, I mean, technically, Mortal Kombat 2 comes out a year later, so I'm probably just gonna have to have you back on next year for
Oh
Mortal
man, what are
Kombat
we gonna
2
do?
for that game's 30th anniversary to make you feel doubly old.
Yeah,
That game
I'll
came out in September of, oh no, I'm sorry, I don't know exact date. It just says late '93. So at least according to
yeah.
Wikipedia, we'll
They
find. I'll see if I can find an actual
you have a year
uh,
to find out.
yeah. We'll
Yeah,
find out.
they had very quick turnaround times. I think the first game was made in like 8 months with a team of like 5 people, something like that.
I think it was. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was like 5. I was about to say 8, but no, I think you're right. According to just Googling it randomly, Mortal Kombat 2 came out in on June 25th, 93. So
Yeah.
I don't
So next
know
year.
if that's like accurate. I can't find where they're getting at from. But anyway,
That sounds right.
but then the very next thing is initial release date, April 93 is like farther down on the page. They don't know.
Well,
They
April
don't
might have been
know.
arcade. Home release might have been the summer.
That might have been it. I don't know. Anyway, we're not here to talk
Yeah.
about Mortal Kombat 2. We're
Yeah.
here to talk about the original game. But sorry, are there any other memories any other things you wanted to go into before we start talking about the kind of development and history behind it?
No, I think that's a good segue to start talking about this kind of ragtag group of guys, of kung fu movie fans that made a video game that basically was just for them, which like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like is kind of a commodity nowadays. Like there's so much, like we were talking earlier off mic about like studio interference and all this stuff, and so much money goes into video games nowadays. Like they were just like a bunch of guys that liked martial arts movies that were just like, let's make this into a video game, because Street Fighter 2 was crushing, and it was honestly what Street Fighter came out, and I think they had pitched the idea to Midway, and then they got turned down, and then Street Fighter 2 came out, did gangbusters in arcade, and then Midway was like, wait, that smells like money, go ahead and make this video game,
Well,
please.
they originally were going to base it off of a license of the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie Universal Soldier.
Yep.
That fell through because JCVD couldn't, like, his schedule was there was too many conflicts, so I guess they couldn't come in to digitize him. But that's where Johnny Cage comes from. It's meant to be as like an homage to Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yep.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, JCVD.
Yeah, so Johnny Cage is the same initials.
Yep. And
He
let's
was
be
originally
real.
he was going to be like the main character before like Liu Kang kind of took over that mantle as the games kind of went on.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But yeah, it was going to be, which is it's so funny to me that like Jean-Claude was going to be in this Mortal Kombat game, but then he ended up being Guile in Street Fighter, the movie. So it's like, really, what's the opposite of dodging a bullet? Taking a bullet? He really took a bullet on that one.
I will think of it this way. He was just shooting himself with smaller caliber bullets to build up a tolerance to larger caliber bullets.
I guess so.
There was a thing I saw on Instagram. Someone asked me like what, or no, I did like ask me questions anonymously, and someone asked like, "What's the worst advice you were ever given?" And someone didn't give me that seriously. It was like a joke, but I really loved the idea of like shoot yourself with smaller caliber bullets to build up your immunity to larger caliber bullets. And I'm like, I don't think I can post that on Instagram because of their the rules on Insta. Like I'm pretty sure they would take that down immediately if someone
they'd be
it.
like, so you're telling kids to go shoot themselves?
Yeah, exactly.
You're banned for life.
But no, so I mean, the Mortal Kombat is very clearly inspired by Bloodsport, which came out a few years earlier, and Bloodsport. I mean, they're almost exactly not in terms of, I don't know about plot, but at least in terms of concept, they're very similar. Like this massive, larger than life tournament involving people from all around the world. In this instance, it's like otherworldly creatures and stuff like that.
Well, that side, the otherworldly side, comes from the other half of the influence was Big Trouble in Little China. That's where the character of Raiden came from.
Raiden is like looks exactly like some of those characters from Big Trouble in Little China.
Right, he's just a dude in like a bamboo hat with electricity powers. Like literally, they watched that movie and were like, do that exactly. Okay, well, what should we change so that it doesn't look like a ripoff? Nothing. Don't change a thing. Make it exactly the same.
I'm amazed they did not get sued by like John. Well, John Carpenter's a video game fan. Like he tweets a lot about playing different games and whatnot. Like if you follow him on Twitter, he's a huge gaming fan. It's kind of funny.
I wonder if he had any input on the Thing video game, which was actually excellent.
Was that the PS2 game?
Yeah, it was like PS2. I played it on original Xbox, but yeah, it was that era.
He might have, but anyway, so yeah, the movie was supposed to be based off the Universal Soldier license. It didn't really happen because JCVD's schedule wouldn't allow time for him to get digitized and put a digital the scan of himself into the game. So they
Mm.
kind of shifted gears back to this idea that you mentioned before. They wanting to do kind of this martial arts movie inspired fighting game, and so Mortal Kombat was born. It was a very short development cycle. It only had, like we said, it was only there was only like eight people on the team. What I do love is that the actors who portrayed the digitized sprites in this have since become gone on to do Danny Paseda, is that, if that is his name,
Pacina.
Daniel
Daniel
Pasina
Pacina.
Pasina, excuse me.
Master
He
Daniel Pacina.
he goes around to conventions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I actually I didn't get to listen to it, but I saw there was a podcast recently with the actress who digitized oh my gosh, what's her name? Sonia.
Sonia.
Yeah,
Carrie Hoskins.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. She's still is in amazing shape. Like she still puts on the costume, the original one.
And she still
I
fits
saw
it
somebody,
and everything.
yeah, she's in incredible shape. And she's she's gotta be what, in her 50s?
She is
I think that's her.
52.
I might be thinking of Mortal Kombat 3 was Carrie Hoskins, but it might be that first one.
She's
But Ed
52.
Boon and her are best friends. They post each other stuff all the time on Twitter, and she's just still. He's always just yeah, dude, what? Look at her. She's still ripped. She's legit Sonya Blade in real life.
Sorry, you're right. She is Mortal Kombat 3. That's what she.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I don't remember.
She was a cheerleader in NBA Jam.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's kind of funny. And she did motion capture for Killer Instinct in 2013. So there we go.
Yeah. Oh, that's sick.
She's done a bunch of other stuff, but those are ones that popped out to me.
Yeah. Quick. Speaking of Ed Boon and Sonya, so Sonya and the eventual character Tanya are both named after his sisters, Sonya and Tanya.
Oh, really?
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of dope.
Sonya got put into the game late. I think in earlier builds they only had I forget the last two characters that were added. It might have been Kano and Sonya, but I'm not entirely sure. But I know there wasn't a female character, and they got a little bit of flack about it when they showed it to when they had test audiences play it. And so they rounded out the roster to what is it? 3, 4, 7 characters. The original was it Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, Sonya, Kano.
Yeah, Johnny Cage, Kano, Liu Kang, Raiden, Scorpion, Sonya Blade, and Sub-Zero. Yep.
Yeah, so 7.
With apparently you can fight Reptile.
Yeah, Reptile, and I would love to talk about the secret. Do you want to get into that now?
What?
Yeah.
No. Let's continue talking a bit about the history a bit more. If there's any, just to make sure we wrap it all up, and then we'll go into the gameplay.
There's plenty of. I still got plenty of history.
Well, the name of the game, it didn't really come to fruition until towards the end of development. It was 6 months in, and they had other names. Let me see what they had. The other names that were suggested were Dragon Attack, Death Blow, Fatality, and my personal favorite, Kumite, based off of Bloodsport once again.
Right, because
nothing really worked, and so someone wrote combat there was a whiteboard in the office, and someone had written down the word combat on a drawing board, just I guess to sketch out ideas and whatnot, and someone wrote K over the C, and so no one really knows who wrote K over the C, but they just liked it, and it just kind of went along from there. And it was Steve Ritchie, who is a pinball designer. What I find interesting is a lot of the guys who worked on this game started off at Williams Pinball before they came over to because Williams eventually worked its way into gaming, because I think it was Williams. Didn't they get absorbed into Bally Midway or something like that? I'm not sure.
I think so, because Williams did work on MK3.
That would make sense then. So, and Ed Boon and John Tobias, it's crazy. If you look at the credits, the designers, Ed Boon, John Tobias, programmers, Ed Boon, artists, John Tobias and John Vogel, and then Dan Forden was the composer.
The sound. Yeah.
Who composed the themes like that dun 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 dun, or that from the movie? That's not from the game, is it?
No,
Not at
it's
least not
not.
the first one.
No, they've actually never used the Mortal Kombat theme song that everyone knows. I'm pretty sure that I'm like 90% sure that was never actually used in any of the games. It was only for the
Really?
movie. Yeah,
And
and it
it's
was a
more
group.
iconic than any of the music from the game.
I know.
That's kind of
The
funny.
group was called the Immortals. It's called Techno Syndrome.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, when we do the movie, we're gonna have to talk about that. We might just do like, you know what? We might have to do the movie and the Mortal Kombat 2 in quick succession next year.
And Annihilation.
Um,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
no, fuck the Annihilation. I'm not
But
torturing
when I'm talking
myself
about
for
it so bad because
We'll
it's
see.
so bad.
It is so bad.
It does have redeeming qualities. One or two.
But okay, I didn't have a lot of, I was telling you this off mic, I didn't have as much chance as I wanted to do a lot of research for this. Parenting, man, it's been a wild weekend.
I know.
So the stuff that I've talked about is the very limited bits of information that I looked up, and I actually, believe it or not, listeners, I did not just read off of Wikipedia. I went to the Did You Know Gaming page and actually was able to corroborate a lot of the stuff they said through other sources, including Wikipedia. So that was fun. But there wasn't much that I didn't normally. I write down copious amounts of notes. Today, I just watched the video during my daughter's nap and hoped that I would remember everything because I was so swamped with getting stuff done. But Andrew,
if it's going to be any game that we're talking about, that you're going to have that level of preparation, this is it, because like I've got it all just pounded into my brain.
That's why I had you on. So. Not that I wouldn't have to do the work, but just like it. I was telling you off mic, man. This is like or maybe I even said it on my. I don't remember anymore. This is like the fourth or fifth recording session in the last like 3 or 5 days or whatever. It's been and I have another recording session tomorrow, so it's just going to be It's been a busy week, but Andrew, go into some other stuff. You were going to talk about the digitizing, like how they kind of digitize the sprites and everything like that.
Yeah, of something about the very short development time that this game had actually is what, I mean, they say like, yeah, when you're kind of, you got the fire to your butt, like that's when you do your best work. And I'm definitely not condoning video game crunch at all.
No.
But they had 8 months to do this. And so they used what they had. And it ended up coming to fruition with a lot of the most iconic things of all time. And actually, specifically this being the 30th anniversary of this game coming out, Ed Boon, I highly recommend going to check out Ed Boon's Twitter because he's been posting a lot of like behind the scenes stuff of how they were doing like the digitization.
Oh yeah, I did watch that somewhat recently.
Yeah, it's so cool because they were basically recording the whole time because that they had to take the images of these people, so you can literally hear so if you don't know, like they didn't do, so Street Fighter is like sprites, like people go in and like draw the characters and animate
beautiful
them.
hand-painted sprites.
Oh yeah, oh my god, dude, like freaking Third Strike is still like the greatest looking video game, like sprite video game, like I think I've ever seen.
That's what a lot of people say. I've heard that on multiple other podcasts, believe it or not.
Yeah, man. Oh god, I'm betraying my Mortal Kombat roots by talking about Street Fighter. No,
I know the enemy. We've brought him up.
There can only be one. No, but so what they did for Mortal Kombat and like Killer Instinct and other games, they took photographs of people like in costumes. They would be like, okay, do like a high punch, and then they would like take a photograph, and they did that. That's how they did the animations. They put them all together. And so while they were doing that, they were like recording, everything, and you can see the moment, like what's arguably maybe the most iconic video game
I know where you're going with this. I remember
of all
this.
time. Scorpions Get Over Here. You can see the moment that came to fruition because they're literally like, oh man, what would be cool, how do we make these guys different? They're talking about Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and like, well, this guy's got ice moves, like, maybe he has like a spear or something, and he could like, you can see Ed Boon like working it out in front of the camera, like, yeah, he could like, throw the spear and like, attach into the guy and like pull him over, and he'd be just like, say something cool like, yeah, like get over here or something like that, and then they're all just like, oh yeah, I love that. And it's just so cool to see this stuff happening in real time. And you can also see them doing Raiden, you know, his pointy hat and whatever. Every character had the animation of when they would get the leg sweep. You know, they'd fall over backwards and do like the kip up. And the character of Raiden, when he was doing it, his hat would always go flying off. They couldn't get the hat to stay on, and they were like tying it to his head, and it just kept looking weird, and just wasn't working out. And they were like, okay, well, you can hear somebody's probably Ed Boon or maybe John Tobias say like, well, he's, you know, made of electricity or whatever. So what if he just kind of like reassembles? And that's why to this day, Raiden's get up animation is just the, you know, the lightning teleport like beam thing, because they couldn't get his hat to stay on when they were recording it for the very first time. It's so cool how like such a little thing like that can become like so iconic.
I'm actually watching some of the clips that you're talking about. Like the one he has, the tweet he has, Ed Boon has the tweet Ed Boon has pinned right now is them talking about, like, it's like a 2-minute video of how Sonya Blade kind of came to be, and it's showing the video of them recording the actress who portrays Sonya Blade, and then kind of going through all the motions and everything. Like, it's really cool. Yeah, I totally forgot that he was doing that, because I watched a similar video to that that he did. That's awesome. I love it when developers are willing to celebrate their own history, because too often they don't do that. Like, I mean, it's like pulling teeth from Nintendo to get, like, they have a bizarre combination of celebrating their own history, but never in the ways that the consumers want.
It's like you have to do it our way, or like they'll shut down tournaments like for Melee because people are using
like code that allows for net play or something like that. Yep.
Yeah, it's like, well, like, how do you know? Then if you don't want people to do this, then support it. Release it again on the Nintendo eShop or whatever. Do you not want money? I don't know.
It makes no sense. But so it's just cool that Ed Boon does that, and I completely forgot that he was doing that in honor of the 30th anniversary of the series. Like, I'm actually going through his Twitter timeline right now. He retweeted the video of Jean-Claude Van Damme dancing. You know that gif of him like in like the tank top and like the jeans, and he's doing the weird hip thing. And he's talking about if we could get Jean-Claude on like in a game or something. I don't know, but
that'd be so funny.
Right? Just have him meet Johnny Cage or something along those lines. How crazy would that be? Yes.
Well,
so
John Tobias. Okay. I was just gonna humble brag real quick. John Tobias retweeted my Scorpion TikTok that I made.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
if
fantastic.
You go to, not to like spoil it already, but if you go to TikTok, my just my personal one, Andrew the Kinsey, you can see a funny little TikTok I made that doesn't have very many views compared to the other one I did of my broken mug that has like 1.7 million views for some reason. But John Tobias actually retweeted it, which was funny. And then he like posted a picture of an actual scorpion and was like, we actually just did get one in our house. And I was like, oh no, watch out for those low pokes.
That's fantastic. That's so funny. I watched that. You sent me that video too, and I was like, I totally thought for a second you were serious, like you found a scorpion in your shoe. I'm like, are you shitting me? What?
It was this guy. It was this one. I'm just gonna have to I'll just put the TikTok, like I'll stitch it in there so that people can see it.
Also pin it to the top of your tweets or whatever. I think that'd be good. Anyway, is there anything else you want to go into before we start talking about the game?
I think that's it. I'm sure I'm filled to the brim with useless knowledge about this game, so if anything else comes up, I'll blurt it out. But that's all that I can think of.
Well, then I think what we should do to kind of go into the gameplay itself is, like I said, Andrew, this episode is your episode to shine, because I don't have a whole lot of connection with the series. I don't have a whole lot of connection with it's one of those things. I've said it a bunch of times. A bunch of times on the show. I love fighting games from a distance. I don't like playing them. I find them infuriating. I don't enjoy the grind of, because to play anyone, almost even the nicest person in the world, I can see how much they enjoy beating me, and I don't like that. Like, it feels, I don't like it. It just seems dirty. I don't like that.
Yeah, it
It
definitely
never
does.
feels like and I understand that, like, your friends aren't there to be your teachers. You're meant to have fun, but I just don't find fun. I don't understand how to learn combos from playing other people, because I don't,
Right.
it just, you have to play so many times just to get anywhere near competent, and it's just the feedback loop of the gameplay itself is just not fun for me. It just isn't. I don't find any enjoyment from it. But I love the
Yeah.
communities around fighting games. I love the lore within
Mhm.
different fighting games series. I like I like watching people play them, because I find competent people, I like watching competent players play the game. But when I try to sit down and play it, it's just like pulling teeth. It's like I could be playing something so much more fun than this right now. But that's, well, just to be clear, listeners, that's subjective. So, Mortal Kombat fans, I'm not attacking the game. This is purely a fault of my own. But regardless of all of this, actually, there is one major fucking thing we have not talked about before we get into the gameplay. I
The
can't
controversy.
believe we haven't, the controversy. We haven't talked
Yeah,
about the contra. I
we've
bet you
touched on it.
there is probably people screaming into their earbuds, being like, What? Talk about the controversy." Or more appropriate named for this, since it's a Mortal Kombat episode, your earbloods. Uh, that was a dumb
I thought
joke.
you were
Never
just going
mind.
to say controversy with a K.
Oh, that's even better. That's a better joke. Earbloods is a reference to a joke from another podcast, and I'm like, no one's going to get this. This is just for me.
It's a deep cut.
um, to no one else except for me. If anyone's has listened to the James Bonding podcast, you'll know the reference. But that's it. Anyway, the controversy surrounding this game, we talked about how violent this game was, and that was controversial. But what was more controversial is that this game specifically, as well as a game called Night Trap, was cited in
Hmm.
a court hearing, in a Congress hearing. Basically, it was one of the games pointed to show, like, this is corrupting our kids. The violence and sex in these games, even though Night Trap has like no sex in it at all, it's creepy, it's weird, and it's unsettling, but there's no sex in it per se.
No.
Um, but like Mortal Kombat was definitely more violent than people were accustomed to for the time. So it's no surprising that it had that much, it brought that much attention to it. But this game is directly, like, it caused it helped bring about the creation of the ESRB, the game industry's self-regulating body, to show, to for consumers to understand, like, okay, what is the content in each of these games? Like, are they meant for kids, are they meant for teens, are they meant for adults, that kind of thing. And this game is one of the reasons that it was this, and Night Trap, and other such things. And in fact, before the ESRB came to exist, Sega took it upon themselves, and that's why if you look on some Sega games, they have like an MA13 rating, I believe. Excuse me, I believe
Yeah.
actually. I actually
I think
have,
those. I was going to say. I think those old.
yeah, my copy of Mortal Kombat 1 over here has MA13. My copy of Mortal Kombat 2 has MA17 listed on it. I guess the second one
Mhm.
was more violent than the first one. Um,
I'd say
like I
so.
said,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. See, I know nothing about the. I know enough about the series to know the characters' names, and obviously some of the catchphrases. Get over here, Mortal Kombat, fatality, babality,
Finish him.
finish him, friendship,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff.
It's interesting you mentioned the like the Genesis. One of the things that due to all this controversy is that the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat you had to enter a code to have blood, which is just, to me, like as a kid I was just like, it's the inferior version for other reasons too, but for the fact that it's like that's the point of the game is the blood, and you had to enter a cheat code to be able to have the blood, other than, or else it's like sweat. It's like they do the blood splatter, but they're gray instead. It's like, why is everybody so sweaty? Why are they sweating out big blobs?
They're just perspiring so much. Perspiring, excuse me.
Yeah.
So no, you're right, and two of the biggest things we just did not bring up: the controversy as well as the difference between the Super Nintendo and the Genesis one. Like the Mortal Kombat on the Genesis was a big deal for Genesis. It really helped sell Genesis consoles a lot quicker than Super Nintendo. Like at this point in the console's life cycle, it was outselling the Super Nintendo. It's wild to think, like it's a crazy thing to think that at one point in time Nintendo had it was like an 80 or 90% market share of the entire video game market. Like they owned that. That was how much Nintendo was not destroying necessarily in a bad way, but that's how much Nintendo owned the video game market. They had 80 or 90% of it. And then one generation later, Sega figured it out Sega of America figured out how to market it in the US, and they actually were winning from a chunk of the generation. But then around 92 is when Super Nintendo got Street Fighter 2, and that was when it started to swing a little bit because it was a timed exclusive for Super Nintendo. But then I would almost argue it evens out because 93 is when Mortal Kombat came out on the home console, but Mortal Kombat on Genesis helped drive it too, because no one wanted the less gory version. Like almost any kid would be like, well, I want the one that's more edgy because you want to feel more adult and that kind of thing.
Right.
So
that was the whole point. It was like, yo, did you know that you can pull somebody's heart out and crush it in your hands? Like, oh, it's crazy.
And this game very much revolved around that kind of schoolyard rumors. Like it actually kind of works out because it leads up to what we were going to talk about with the gameplay. There was, like you mentioned before, there was a total of 7 original characters with this game: Johnny Cage, Kano, Liu Kang, Raiden, Scorpion, Sonya Blade, and Sub-Zero. Scorpion and Sub-Zero are palette swaps of each other. I believe isn't Scorpion kind of like a brown and goldish type of thing, and then Sub-Zero obviously is blue.
All the ninjas were black and then a color. So Scorpion is black and yellow, Sub-Zero was black and blue.
There we go.
Reptile was black and green.
But could you play as Reptile in this first game? You could fight Reptile, but could you play as Reptile?
I don't think so. But like most of the secret characters, Reptile, as we know him today, he was just a green ninja that had Scorpion and Sub-Zero's moves and was really fast. He didn't have the acid spit or the force ball or the any of the the same thing with Jade.
He wasn't
in Mortal
his
Kombat
own character
2.
yet, yeah.
Right. He didn't really have an identity until Mortal Kombat 2. He would take the mask off and he'd have the lizard head, and he'd eat your head and shoot the acid and stuff. And then in that one, Jade was a secret character, but she doesn't have the identity that she did with the staff and the stuff that she has now. She was just Kitana and Melina together and really fast. That was a pattern with that.
And so wait, Jade was in this game as well as a character you could fight?
No, she was in 2.
She was in 2. Okay, sorry. I was just confused by that.
In a secret character way, the same way that Reptile was in 1, and then wasn't a true character until 3, properly. But yeah, Reptile, actually, it was really funny. I wish I had gotten a picture of this, but I was driving. But I just took a road trip recently to get this tattoo, and I went to Salem, Massachusetts, and right when I got there, on the pit stage in Mortal Kombat, how there's the moon and the clouds and stuff.
No,
every now and then, okay, everyone else, there's clouds and moon and stuff, and in the background, and if a witch goes over the moon, I think that's the first trigger to fight Reptile. And I was in Salem, Massachusetts, very witchy place, and I literally I looked up at the sky as I was driving in, and I was like, this looks exactly like the pit from Mortal Kombat, the original Mortal Kombat pit stage. And I'm like, a witch very well could fly across the moon right now, and it would be absolutely appropriate because of where I am. And I was like, I'm gonna fight Reptile soon. This is awesome.
Is it awesome?
And then you had to no. I mean, if that's how I die, if it's oh, by the way, Mortal Kombat characters are real and they killed somebody who was in in Salem,
That'd be the way you'd
Massachusetts.
want to
I'd be like,
go.
I guess that'd be fine, if that's how I go. But yeah, you have to fight, and then I think once that happens, you have to hit down and start or something, and then you have to get I know much more about the later games, but I'm pretty sure the next thing you have to do is get a double flawless on your next CPU fight without blocking. You have
Oh
to.
wow.
And those games were hard. Like those first couple, like were brutally difficult. So getting a double flawless against the computer without blocking, and then so when you're on the pit, and then you go to the bottom of the pit where all the spikes are, and then you fight Reptile.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, so that brings me to the school ground rumor about the hidden character in this game, Ermac.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew,
Yes.
explain Ermac to the listeners.
Okay, so there's somewhat conflicting reports, but as I understand it, it was an error that happened on the arcade version of one particular like arcade version of Mortal Kombat, the original, where Scorpion would be red. It was a visual glitch, and then instead of his name, it said Ermac, like ERMAC, and I think it was just a code error message.
It was like error something. Yeah,
it stood
something
for
along
error
those lines.
macro. Yeah. And so much like Reptile, that became like a thing, like, oh, Ermac is a secret character, whatever, and then would eventually become a proper character down the line 2 games later. Same thing with Scarlet in Mortal Kombat 2. There was like a glitch where Kitana would be red, but her name didn't change at all, and so people were like, oh, is that a secret character, or is that Scarlet? She wouldn't become a character until Mortal Kombat 9 in 2011. So like there was a huge jump there.
Oh wow.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite things about this series, is that like most of the characters have like really cool, interesting things like that, where they would start either as like a glitch or as a joke, in terms of like in the way that like Rain, the purple ninja, Purple Rain, started as like a joke character, and then they made him real because people were like, wait, what was that? Because he was in the attract mode of, I think, Mortal Kombat 3 or Ultimate MK3, I think 3, and he's just on there for a quick second, and there's a purple ninja named Rain, just as a literal joke because Ed Boon likes Prince, and so then they made him a real character. Or in the development of Mortal Kombat 1, there was a character who was going to be like a special ops. He was basically he was designed to be like basically what visually became Jax in the next game, but his name was Curtis Stryker, which they used as for a character in Mortal Kombat 3. So like there's so much of like every little thing. It's almost like they didn't waste anything when they were coming up with this stuff. It's like so many little things became like these super popular characters. I mean, nowadays, Curtis Stryker is probably the most hated Mortal Kombat character because his whole MO is like police brutality, and it's just like maybe not that today. Maybe we can just never have him again.
Isn't Sonya a police officer though?
Sonya and Jax are like special forces. They're like military.
I still think it's so like uncomfortable to watch her just like shoot somebody in the head in the newer Mortal Kombat games.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, a little, yeah. One of the things that I also love about this game is that like I said, these guys just loved kung fu movies, and like John Tobias worked in comics and stuff. And so like they just made like a playground like of stuff that they would want to see. And I saw it described in a post somewhere that like Mortal Kombat, especially like 3 onwards, because in MK3 they started introducing a lot of the like more modern stuff, like the cyborg ninjas and like a lot of the like modern day soldiers and stuff like that. And somebody described Mortal Kombat, and it's present in the first game too. Someone described it as like what it feels like to be like a kid playing like with your toys, like just your random assortments of like, my G.I. Joe guy is fighting this like, lizard guy creature, and like and there's like, especially as you get later on in the series, there's vampires, and there's like, it's just like they're just all over the place. And just because it's the different realms, and like, and even that's like as another thing, like the lore of this series is so dense, and it started in MK1, because that was something that they wanted to do that like Street Fighter wasn't doing, which was like having stories for all these characters. Like remember in the arcades, it would be like show you the character and like a little blurb about them. So you had like a little bit of backstory, or like you could start putting these
You had
things
some
together.
connection to them.
Yeah, you know, it's like Shang Tsung was a sorcerer that came to whatever because of the whole 10 tournaments thing, and like all that was just like side stuff that like they built up. And I remember listening to it. There's a hilarious podcast called Mortal Podcast that I love, that Ben Meckler, the host, had John Tobias on, and he said, yeah, we basically wanted storyline wise to have it be like Star Wars. Like we didn't want to be like, okay, this is the beginning of the story. They wanted it to be like, yeah, start like Star Wars. This is episode 4. We're in it. Like this is like serious now. We're in the 10th tournament. You know, a bunch of stuff happened beforehand. And if we lose, then like the Earth will be, you know, absorbed. And like that's what drew me personally to this game, was these crazy characters and all these crazy storylines, and obviously like the violence too, because I was a kid. Like you said, you know, like you're a kid and you're just like, I want to see crazy stuff. I want to like rip somebody's head off and like cut their arms off. You know, sorry, fanboy moment.
No. You end the fanboy moment on violence, which I think is a little telling, Andrew. But no, yeah, you're right. That type of storytelling is really compelling. I like being able to, and it's very video game-esque too, coming into a story in the middle of the story, because generally game storytelling, you can't do an intro, an act 1, an act 2, an act 3, and a conclusion, or you know, like an intro, or like what is it? It's like the introduction and like the inciting incident, and then the rising conflict, and then the conclude, like the climax, and then the conclusion.
Right.
Like
particularly
most games,
for fighting games.
Yeah, most games start in the middle. Most games have to start in the rising action, in the section where like shit's getting done, stuff's happening. That's generally where games kind of take place, and it's hard for games to, because otherwise you're just it's just all exposition. Like it's very hard to get the introduction and the inciting incident unless it's something quick and simple. There are a few games that pull it off. You know, thinking of like Last of Us is a really good example, where they show the beginning of the zombie apocalypse and the tragic event that happens to Joel in the beginning, and then it doesn't, you know, then it jumps ahead forward a bunch of years, and you understand the world that it's in right away, and you understand everything you need to about Joel's character from that opening mission. But generally games start off in the rising action, because that's where all the action is. That's where that's where the gameplay would be, because gameplay is generally action based. So it's interesting so it's smart that they started it kind of in that moment. Like, this is the 10th, what did you say? It was the 10th year. Is it? And if we don't win this, then, you know, we're screwed, and humanity and the world is doomed. From what I see here, like they call Earth or Earth Realm, right? Like that's like our world is Earth Realm.
Yeah, it's actually technically, as I understand it, Earth Realm is like our entire universe. Like our whole galaxy, like our entire observable universe is all Earth Realm. So like each realm is almost like its own different universe, like the Outworld and Edenia and Order Realm and Chaos Realm and the Nether Realm. They're all just like different planes of like, it's not like different planes of like the same existence. It's like entirely different universes, which I think is super cool. And I want them to explore that a little bit more, like in later games like Mortal Kombat Deception. As janky as it was, that story mode where you get to go through all the other realms and you play as like the little kid Shujinko, and he grows up and becomes like an old man, like you get to go around and like live this whole life in all the realms. Like it was really cool to see all this stuff and see like everything that they had set up from this very first game in like 1992, to like see all this stuff like shown on screen and seeing it explore, and talking about like how fighting games have a hard time with narrative. Like NRS, or, you know, NetherRealm Studios, who's what Midway is called now, I hate that it was this game that did it, but Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe was the first one where they started to do the story mode, where it was like, okay, we're actually going to tell a linear story this time, but it's like chapters. You play as, you know, one character for a little while, you see some cutscenes, there's a and then you go to the next one, and that's how they do everything from like Mortal Kombat 11 or from Mortal Kombat 9, which was 2011 onwards. It's like that linear story, and they've crushed it at that. Like that's how you can tell a linear story in a fighting game and actually have it be enjoyable. Because before, most fighting games, and how most fighting games still are, and back in the day, like the original Mortal Kombat, the only story you got was that attract mode stuff, each character's little bio, the little intro thing talking about Shang Tsung and trying to take over the realms over the tournaments, and then every character's like arcade ending had like a little bit of a, but even that was just kind of a what if, like this is what would happen if Sonya won the tournament, this is what happens if Kano won the tournament, and you don't know what's canon until the next game comes out. So it's like,
okay, yeah,
such a weird way that they had to get around it.
A lot of the lore for this first game was told via comic book. There was there's like you were saying, there's some additional information about the characters and their motivations for entering the tournament. That's directly read off Wikipedia, but it's very concise. It's in the game. It's built in. That stuff is built into the game, but the rest of it was from a comic book. So, did you ever read any of the comic books or get to like partake in any of that extra media?
Yeah, I remember reading some of them as a kid at my friend's house. Those old ones where the character designs were like this, like with the ninjas had like the weird little cat ear thing. I don't know if you can even see it, but those old school style of like the G.I. Joe kind of, Mortal Kombat comics. But the next time I think I read any of the comics was not until like MKX, which was like 2014 or something like that. But they're pretty good. They're not anything to like write home about, but it's fun. I love Mortal Kombat, so I'm like, yeah, give me all of it. Like, and of course, because it was the 90s, they were like, we have comics, we have books, we have really weird VHS one-off cartoons of Mortal Kombat. There was a Saturday morning cartoon show, a children's TV show, cartoon Mortal Kombat show called Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm, which just boggles my mind because it's like, yeah, we're not going to have any violence, but it's Mortal Kombat. And I, of course, as a child when that came out, was like, yes, give me all of that. I think Sub-Zero is played by Ron Perlman in that show.
What, really?
Yeah, it might be Stryker now that I think about it, because that was MK3 era.
That's so crazy.
Funny.
That's like the opposite of NES, where like they would take R-rated movies and turn them into games. They effectively took an R-rated game and turned it into like a PG, like a PG cartoon. Like it's such a weird concept to like do that reverse. That's so funny.
Yeah, and I have to mention, I did say there was like a one-off VHS. If anyone who's listening or watching this wants to see the best worst thing in the world, like I'm talking like the room levels of like this is the best and the worst thing, there's a Mortal Kombat VHS like tie-in thing to the movie called Mortal Kombat The Journey Begins, and it is the worst, like recycled animations, like horrible voice acting. Actually, the guy like the guy who plays, and this is perfect, the guy who plays Johnny Bravo voices Johnny Cage. So he basically plays the same character, but like the dialogue is awful. It sometimes feels like a YouTube poop, like it's that bad. But it's and the worst CGI you've ever seen. It cuts randomly to like these CGI fights. It was the like Grand Theft Auto 3 style of you can't have hand movements, but they have to do martial arts. So like they always have one open hand and one closed fist, and they're just kind of moving around like this. Sorry, audio listeners.
No. I was just gonna say the voice acting talent is no joke in this movie too. Jim Cummings is Shang Tsung.
Yep.
And Jennifer Hale is Sonya Blade.
Yeah, and that's so it's hard for that level of talent to be bad, but somehow it is, and that's just the writing, honestly. But it is hysterically bad. It's only like a half an hour long, and I still love it. I got it on VHS, and I digitized it to a DVD so I can watch it whenever I want. It's also on YouTube, I'm sure, for free.
That is wild.
Yeah,
that's so. I've never heard of this. I almost need to do an episode on this.
Please do. It's honestly like I want to watch it with somebody, because every time I show somebody this, like I remember how hilariously bad it is, and I've been wanting to watch it again. But I will watch it by myself, but I'd love to show it to somebody else if I can.
You
We'll have to
have it,
watch it and then
right?
do like a little review over it. Oh yeah, I have it. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do this. That's just
Yep.
something that's gonna have to happen. Um, and I'll have to come over and watch it and
Yep.
cry a little bit on the inside when I'm forcing myself to watch. But I also watch Captain N, so you know what? I have no room to cry because I force myself to watch
Yeah.
questionable shows of questionable quality
Right. And at
all
least
the time.
like I said, with this, at least it's so bad that it's good. Like, there's the whole bell curve thing of like
Hmm.
enjoyability. So like, you start at 10, you go down to 0 in terms of enjoyability, and then the enjoyability goes back up to like -10. Like The Room is like a -10. There are bad movies that are, in the single digits that are just like so bad, but it's not fun to watch. This is like The Room level. Like I'd probably say like this is like a -8 or a -9. It's ace. Anyway, like Mortal Kombat Annihilation is so bad that it's bad, but I still like it because it's Mortal Kombat. It's not it is a bit of it's tough to watch because it's not good. This is like it's hilariously and amazingly bad.
Now, a couple other things I wanted us to touch on. One, what is the basic plot of this first game? From what I'm seeing here, it's just because we've talked all around it. Like we've talked about the tournament and whatnot, but like this specifically, the basic like backdrop for this specific tournament is that um I mean the whole from what I understand, from what I remember, especially from the movie, Shang Tsung is banished to Earthrealm, and he for 500 years he has, with the help of this monster Goro, won Mortal Kombat, and after a certain number of victories he will be able to go back to his realm and they will merge or something like that, right? Like what's the
Um,
like we've talked nebulously about how if Earthrealm loses its tournament, then they're screwed, but
right.
we haven't really talked about what the actual plot is.
Okay. I'm gonna do my best Ben Meckler impression. Please listen to Mortal Podcast. He starts every episode off like this. We're just gonna quickly rewind to the dawn of time. I'll do a much faster version than the real thing. But basically, what the Mortal Kombat equivalent of God is like was called the One Being. No one knows how it became into existence. It just was. The One Being created all these elder gods, and they were like delegated to the different, like there was titans that were like for time and space and stuff, and then these elder gods were delegated to like lower ranking whatever and relegated to the other realms and stuff. And one day they were like, you know what? Or no, they weren't the realms yet. They were just like subservient to the elder god and or to the One Being. And the elder gods were like, hey, we don't want to have a boss. Why are you telling us what to do? We're gonna kill you and cut you up into a billion pieces. And so they do, and that's what becomes the realm. Yeah, they take these things called Kamidogu daggers, which become a thing in the later games. They basically kill God, cut it up into like a billion pieces, and each piece of this God becomes the realms. And so they don't want the realms to reform, but they want life to have choice and what is it, like autonomy and sentience and stuff like that, and free will. So they're like, okay, so we'll just create it's like, in a weird cosmic way, human nature, or like the nature of life to want to conquer each other, is really like the will of the One Being wanting to reform itself. So they were like, so we don't want this to happen.
Hmm.
We do want free will, so we're just going to make it really hard. So if your realm wants to merge with another realm, which basically means like you take it over, it becomes part, like they literally just kind of like fuse, like the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
They'll go, you have to beat it in 10 Mortal Kombat tournaments in a row, which is just, you get your greatest fighters from one realm and fight the one from another. If they win, then that's like, one becomes the Mortal Kombat champion, and the champion of the realms becomes immortal, or rather like they can be killed but they don't die from old age. So like the original Kung Lao was like 500 years old because he was the like Mortal Kombat champion. So
Hmm.
Outworld was like, yeah, okay, we're gonna conquer Earthrealm, and so they won previous to the original Mortal Kombat games tournament, they won 9 tournaments in a row with the help of from Shang Tsung and Goro, the big forearm guy. And so where the first tournament or the first Mortal Kombat picks up is like, okay, so this is our last chance. So that's why there's like the high stakes. And Shang Tsung is like the sorcerer that's working for the Emperor of Outworld, who wants to absorb Earthrealm.
Earthworld or Earthrealm.
Yeah. Whew.
Okay, and Shao Kahn is the Emperor of Outworld.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the basic premise of the game. And Goro is like the big 4-armed, muscular, crazy dude from. Was his design always like that? Or was it just something? Because I only know his movie design. Was his design in the game similar to what it was in the movie?
Oh, yeah. Like they pretty much did it spot on. The original game design for Goro was like a little bit more squat. And they did a claymation model for him, so he's like this like weird clay, like Jason and the Argonauts looking guy. And but he originally, so for some reason his race, the Shokan, are like half dragon, even though they don't have any dragon type features. But that's, I guess, why they have.
Would you say his nose kind of has like a dragon-esque type of vibe to it? I remember his nose was super weird.
I don't think he even has a nose, now that I think about it. He might just have like the little slits. Or maybe he does. I think it has changed. His design's changed over the years, but yeah, he's the 4-armed guy. They live for like thousands of years. They're super powerful. He was the champion of Mortal Kombat and just like literally decimating everybody until Liu Kang comes along and he's like, "Not today, dickhead," and he kills him. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah, you're right. He just has he doesn't look like a dragon at all. I'm looking at a picture of him now. He's just got like an 8-pack of abs,
right,
and like 2 sets of like areolas. Yeah, it's very uncomfortable looking.
Classic video game design. Funnily enough, they do eventually have a character named the Dragon King Onaga, who has nothing to do with Goro's race and actually is more dragony. He's like the big bad from later on. Anyway.
Okay. So that's the basic premise of the game. I just wanted to kind of talk about like what the general story was, because we kind of talked around it nebulously and kind of talked about all the world building that Mortal Kombat has done and that this game set up. Like it, by the fact that it started off in like this is the 10th and final time of the Mortal Kombat tournament. Otherwise, Earthrealm will be merged with Outworld. Outer World or Outworld? It's just Outworld. It allows them to expand upon it greatly. Like they can do so many different things before, after. They can do whatever they want with the story. With all of that said, I do think we should at the very least, talk a little bit about just the core gameplay. And I know it's hard to kind of talk about fighting games in terms of gameplay, because for someone like me, the layman who doesn't know much about it, it's just, you have one character on one side, another character on the other, and then whoever wins, like you have punches, you have kicks, low punches, high punches, like low kicks, high kicks, depending on the game, depending on how each game is designed, and you have special moves, and it's someone like me who doesn't know fighting games, it's very simplistic, but I understand, like, especially because I know I have you and a bunch of other friends, Casey and my friend Jay, like each of you are like masters in specific fighting games. Casey with Tekken, Jay with Soul Calibur, and you with Mortal Kombat. So I think a good way to approach this for people like me who don't notice the subtle differences, other than the difference in like special move names. What separates Mortal Kombat from other fighting games? Like what makes it unique, besides the gore, I should say? Like what, at least for you, and I know it's going to be hard because I don't know how well you remember the first game, but like we're trying, we're sticking to the first one. Well, you know what? Let's do this. What does Mortal Kombat 1 do different than Street Fighter 2? That's because that was its contemporary.
Right. That's a great place to start. So funnily enough, when Street Fighter 2 came out, I remember hearing that Ed Boon was playing it obviously because like it was Street Fighter 2. It was huge, and he was like, I want to do everything that game is doing, but like in the opposite. So like Street Fighter is very theatrical and like the what later even more so later on, but in Street Fighter 2 it was much more like colorful and kind of cartoony, and Mortal Kombat wanted to take like a more grounded like adult approach because home consoles were coming out, and so like arcades really weren't so much like for kids anymore, so like we can make something like super violent and make it like the movies that we like. Mortal Kombat's like, or for like Street Fighter's like, that's like for kids, and we want to do something for adults. So just the fact that it's a little more grounded and it's a little more I would say it's a bit slower pace than Street Fighter, and that still pretty much holds up today. But really, it was the art style. I think that was the just the presentation of it was really what set it apart.
Yeah.
Not being quite so strangely proportioned, like kind of anime look, and honestly, that's really just the difference between Eastern and Western game design. But they wanted it to like look real and feel real, like as much as possible. And so like with that came like, okay, well, if two people are actually like in a fight, there's going to be blood. If they're out there to like fight for themselves and for their, we have ninjas and military people and monks and stuff, like they're going to be killing each other and like beating the literal like piss and blood out of each other. So
yeah,
it was really just a presentation standpoint and a not so much of a gameplay standpoint. They divert quite a bit more as the games go on. But yeah, I mean, fighting games in general are just about I know you said like they're all kind of like simplistic, but it's more of just getting in the mindset of your opponent and like predicting what they're going to do. And it's, as much as I hate chess, like it does kind of feel like chess sometimes because you like want to think ahead because you're expecting them to jump, so like you're getting ready to do like an anti-air move, or like you think they're going to like shoot the low fireball, so you're getting ready to jump to predict their and this game kind of had, in a much more simple way, it set the precedent for the kind of grounded like spacing based game that like they kind of honestly went back to with Mortal Kombat 11. Was a very, and honestly this is why, because everything's subjective, this is why some people didn't like MK11, was because it was very slow and it's not crazy over the top. It is in terms of like when you do the X-ray moves and the fatal blows,
the violent stuff, yeah,
the fatalities and stuff, yeah. But it's a very much like a grounded type, footsies and spacing, and yeah. Sorry, I like
you just brain farted there for a second.
I did, and then like you started to yawn, like maybe
my yawn.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to just like keep harping on the same thing, but yeah.
Okay. So then I guess my next question would be the big draw to Mortal Kombat, that the violence was it, but the fatalities specifically.
Mm-hmm.
The fatalities were super creative. Like they are definitely violent, but I think what's cool about the fatalities is that it, in a weird morbid sense, it allowed the developers to be super creative with their kills.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much kind of like a horror movie in that sense. Like it's almost like they're designing the next kill in a horror movie.
Yeah.
And each character, like with each character is their own serial killer, and how would this serial killer pull a Jason from Friday the 13th and find a creative way to kill somebody
who's
or
canon
whatnot.
in Mortal Kombat.
Oh, I forgot he is. I forgot they added him. That's
yeah.
And then didn't in like Mortal Kombat, like the one that like, is it Mortal Kombat 9 or whatever, the one that came out in like 2008 or 9 or something
11.
like that? If you played it on PS3, you could get Kratos in it, and if you played it on 360, you could get could you get
Kratos,
Master Chief? That would
no. Kratos was the only console specific character.
No, there was something that you did for. I could have sworn there was something for Xbox 360. I could have sworn.
I don't think so.
I don't remember then. I will try to. You could get Freddy Krueger as a DLC in that, but
DLC,
yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm gonna have to double check on this because I could have sworn that you could get.
Soul Calibur did that.
No, you're right. I'm seeing it now. Yeah, that's interesting. So only the Xbox did nothing. They just PlayStation's
Yeah.
like, we'll give you Kratos, which to be honest fits with the
Oh,
world of
100%.
Mortal Kombat.
His stage was awesome
But
too. He got his own stage, and you could, in God of
mhm.
War when you like do all the like button prompts, what is it, quick time events to like kill the bosses and stuff. You do that if you do a stage fatality on his. You can choose like all these different traps to like drop your opponent into, and you're
Oh,
like
that's
pushing the
cool.
buttons to do it. It'll be like square, circle, triangle. It's pretty cool. But he was also busted as all get out and was like banned from all the tournaments because his character was too good.
I would not be surprised by that. Okay. But back to what I was saying about fatalities.
Mhm.
I guess my question kind of the fatalities kind of leads into that. What were the combos like in this? Because I think about when you do a Hadouken in like Street Fighter, I always it's like a quarter circle and then I forget what it is. So
Yeah.
like, what was the type of moves or inputs that you would have to do for Mortal Kombat? Was it the same kind of quarter circle type of things, or was it like up, down, left, right, or like what types of inputs? I guess specifically would you have to input in order for fatalities? I understand it's different for every character, but just kind of in general.
In general, it's actually pretty uniform across the board. That's another thing that differs Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Like you said, Street Fighter Hadoukens are like quarter circle. You think about like the arcade sticks, like I have here, like they're designed for like sweeping movements. But they really
Hmm.
wanted to focus on like the home because things were moving away from the arcade, sadly. So they really wanted to focus on like the home market, and so like their special moves are all most of them are like two directions. Like you do like Sub Zero's ice is like down forward, not like a Hadouken like quarter circle down forward, but literally just like down and then forward and then a punch. Scorpion's spear is like back low punch. So it was usually like a double in a back or double forward or like a down forward or a down back. And the fatalities were like 3 buttons, 4 buttons. Like Sub Zero's like spine rip is like forward, down, forward, high punch. Like they weren't that hard to do, but in the earlier games, you only had like maybe 2 seconds to do it. Like when we went to that arcade recently, we were playing Mortal Kombat, and I was like trying
Yeah,
desperately to
yeah.
like I felt like such a fake fan because I was like I know the fatalities, but they literally was like it'd be like finish him, and then your the character falls over, and it's like you get like such little time to do it, that's why it was so like if you could do it and you're ready for it and you could do these crazy like finishing things because no other games had this. Street Fighter had the like you get the last hit and it does the slow mo like you win.
Yeah.
This was like a final fu to your opponent. I'm going to embarrass you in front of everybody.
Could rub it in your opponent's face a little bit, like I beat you. You're dazed, so now I'm gonna get to beat the shit out of you or do a fatality.
Right. Yeah, and that was like you said the thing that really differentiated this game from anything, and honestly is what made it famous because it's the violence, it's the ESRB, the controversy, and what it's still what they still uphold to is like the most comical and over the top like violence you can legally put on a video game.
I mean, the newer ones are just nuts where you see like x-ray things of like, bones getting broken and
Yeah.
all this other wild stuff. But I think we should start wrapping this up. We've gone on about the story, the gameplay, we've gone on about its development history. I think we should wrap it up here with some final thoughts real quick. I don't have much for myself on this one. I listeners, I do these types of episodes here where my guest honestly does a lot of the heavy lifting, not because I'm necessarily disinterested, but it's just something where I try to bring on people who are passionate about a specific game or super knowledgeable. Andrew here happens to be both, and also he's one of my closest friends, so
Oh,
it all kind of works out. But the reason besides just having them on is it's for me as well, not just to make the episode better. Otherwise, you'd be listening to me spout a whole bunch of nonsense that I don't know, that I pretend to know about. But this is more for me too, because now I'm getting to learn about the game and the series, whether it's Mortal Kombat or otherwise. So I like these types of episodes. So like my final word on Mortal Kombat is I have a much deeper appreciation for the lore.
Mm.
Specifically, like, I had no idea about the whole creation of the universe and how there was like this godlike being that got killed by his own creations and split up into these daggers. Like, what a fucking wild story. I love it.
That's the
Um,
tip of the iceberg too, man. It gets wacky.
I believe it. We should just do a whole lore dump episode, just Mortal
Yo,
Kombat lore, mortal
I
lore.
will I will do it with zero prep. I will do it tomorrow if you want. But yeah, I feel the exact same way. Like that's why my YouTube channel is called The Experience Point, because like I want to hear other people's experiences. I want to share experiences with people. I have a segment that's called Experience Share. Like I literally like I want to have people on and be like, like you would be good to have on and be like, okay, Josh, gush about Ratchet and Clank for an hour. Like I want to feel your passion, much like you did for me with Mortal Kombat. I have friends, like Casey would be good to have on for Tekken. Like literally just be like, the floor is yours. Like, why do you like Tekken so much? Give me like, whatever is the equivalent of like an elevator pitch, but for an hour long. Just gush about what you love about it. Tell me your favorite memories. And like, that's why I think the way that you and I do like our content, like it just fits so well together, because we just love like, the nostalgia, the everything that goes into it, not just like, oh yeah, like this game came out and like this is the development and whatever. It's like that's a cool part of it, but you and I both are like heavily focused on like why to you specifically is it so important. And I'm so happy to hear that you're like,
The
I
emotional connection.
hearing about this lore now and like how crazy it is. Like I love that. I love getting to share that.
One of the things I try to do with my show is I want to be informational. Like that's why we talked about its development. We talked about how it kind of came to be with, the whole originally going to be the Universal Soldier adaptation and all that whatnot. And because that stuff is interesting. Like I think video game history is fascinating. But with that said, if you're just reciting cold facts, then you might as well just go to a university for game history. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it feels that I don't want it to feel like a textbook.
Yeah, there's
So
hundreds of
because the
YouTube
best
videos about like facts, but like
exactly,
experiences are going to be different from person to person. So that's why there's
and
not just
that's why
one
I want
podcast. That's
exactly. Well, that's why I like to combine the two. Like I want
Yeah.
to have like you need to hear an emotional connection. It, there's an uh there's a really great YouTube channel I showed you before, that Every Frame of Painting YouTube channel,
Oh my god, yeah,
and
that
they
Edgar
talk.
Wright video is
Yeah,
so good.
they did an episode on he's Tony Zhao, Tony Zhu. I'm so sorry, Tony. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but the channel has been inactive for a number of years. He's kind of it's still up, but he's not doing anything with it. He did a video on Chuck Jones, though, the
Hmm.
one of the most prolific Looney Tunes
Looney
directors
Tunes guy,
and
yeah.
animators, and he talks about how one of the one of the elements of comedy is it has to be grounded in some semblance of reality. Like if you don't know how something is, like if you can't relate to something, how do you know it's supposed to be funny?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing with this show. To tie it back to the point I'm trying to make is, if you don't know something is if you don't have an emotional connection with something, or you don't see that emotional connection that someone else has with it, how do you know it's supposed to be important? And we can go on and on about the historical context. Like there are a few landmark games, like regardless of your opinions on like Super Mario Brothers, it's one of the most important games of all time. And same, I would argue to a degree with Mortal Kombat as well. Regardless of if you like Mortal Kombat or not, it helped create the ESRB, which is monumental in game history.
Yeah.
But when it's not one of these games that has like some landmark, like it is a momentum shifting event, how do you know that a game is important? Well, you need to have that emotional connection. So if you don't have it, hopefully the person on the episode does. So like that's why I try to find guests that for specific episodes where it's like these are I whenever someone says like, hey, I'm interested in coming on, I'm like, send me a list of your favorite games. I
Hmm.
don't care what they are. I could know everything about the game. I could know nothing about the game, but I need to know what your favorite ones are, because I can talk. I'm interested in your history and the history of the game. That's what interests me. But I can't, like, if that's all I have, I can't hold a whole podcast on my own. So I want something you're passionate about. And I've made the mistake of having some people on where I'm like, hey, I want to do this episode. Would you be interested? And they say, yeah. And then we get on and they have nothing to say about it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention names. I can tell you off mic who I'm
it's
thinking
me.
of, but no, it's oh god, no.
You're like, God, no,
But
God, you can
yeah,
never
no.
shut up.
I mean, no. But I, like I said, my experience and my final word, my final thoughts on the original Mortal Kombat, one of the most important games of all time. It helped create the ESRB, but also it created this amazing, crazy franchise that's still one of the most popular fighting game franchises today. So, Andrew, your final thoughts, and this might be a long-winded one because mine was pretty long too. So, what are your final thoughts on Mortal Kombat?
On specifically this first iteration of this game, you may be surprised. It's actually pretty short. I'm actually in a similar boat as you. The very first game, I understand, I appreciate it for what it did. It was the launching point for one of, probably my second favorite franchise of all time. Um, and but it's the game itself is like not my favorite one. It's probably, aside from like maybe Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, it's maybe my least favorite Mortal Kombat to play, like to go back and play, just because I prefer like 2 and 3, like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, or the newer ones like MK9. Um, but like you said, the importance of it, the like it kickstarting the ESRB, like kicking it in the butt and being like, okay, we need to start taking video games as seriously as we do movies.
We need to exist. That's what it did. It's like
Yeah, right.
it was a non-entity. They're like, oh yeah, we should probably exist so consumers know what content is in games.
Yeah. But I think that also paved the way for more stuff like it, because when it came out, it was like, look at these crazy guys just making this like super violent stuff. Again, there was violent video games, but this was on a new level, and it was kind of like, was like, no, we need to take this medium seriously. We can make essentially R-rated, video games, like, things in this art form, just like you have E-rated ones, and there's just like a PG movie. Like there's games for kids, there's movies for kids, there's games for adults, there's movies for adults. It's all across the board. It's a medium, it's not a genre. It's kind of like how when people are like, oh, I don't really like get anime, or like I don't watch animation. That's like saying you don't like guitar. Like there's super soft guitar, there's like crazy hardcore metal guitar. Like it's not a genre. Animation is not a genre, you know. But
Oh, I would argue it's not necessarily, it's not like you don't like a guitar. That's like saying you don't like music because it's not, or maybe not, that's not the best because it's a visual medium, but it's like, that's like saying like I don't like TV shows because I don't like they're only 30 minutes long. It's like, it's just a different visual medium. It's a guitar is like a specific instrument. I would say if you're comparing, it's animation is its own medium, right?
right.
Because
Well,
it's similar to film, but it's interesting to just write off an entire like I don't like animation. It's like I don't like that entire medium. It's the same thing when people say I don't like reading, I don't like books. It's like, really? Like I'm sure you like some, maybe you don't like reading, but to say you don't like books is interesting.
right. I think I say guitar because it's like, if the correlation is like entertainment in general, or like things that you watch, like TV shows, movies, and things like that, like that's the equivalent of music. And saying like, well, I don't like animation, that's like writing off a whole, it's not a genre. It's not like saying I don't like
Oh, I see what you're
metal.
saying. So
It's
if
just one
if the
particular element.
band is, if the whole band is TVs, movies, and animation, you don't like animation, you're writing off one instrument of that band
Right,
for all
which is
intents and
weird to say.
purposes.
Like, well, animation can
Okay.
be anything, just like guitar, is just one instrument that can be like done in so many different ways. There's animation, and same for like relating it to video games. There's cartoons for kids. We were talking about Bluey for a lot off mic because you're a dad. Like there's animation for kids,
God,
there's animations for adults
you
that
don't
like,
have to be a dad to love that show. I'm just
that's true.
saying.
But that's why you watch it. But
Yeah,
I do hear that it is excellent.
it
But
is
like,
very good.
anyway, to bring it back, like I appreciate the first Mortal Kombat game for what it did and its legacy. It's not my favorite one. I don't I like playing it because it's like, oh, this is cool to see like where it came from, but I get over it pretty quick. I don't sit and have like really intense matches with people like when I play them and have be like, oh man, that was like a really good, kind of like the original Street Fighter. It didn't really become.
No one knows the original Street Fighter.
I know. Even more so, yeah, than like Mortal Kombat. Again, like it took a bit for the momentum, I guess, to catch on and really like find itself. But what it started maybe one of the most influential video games of all time.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think that's
like
we
were just talking about like yeah, that's a good place to stop. Let me continue. We were talking about like all the iconic, maybe some of the most iconic phrases of any medium, any entertainment medium. Like everybody knows, like finish him, get over here, flawless victory, fatality. Like even if you don't know video games, you're like, oh yeah, that's Mortal Kombat. Like I'm struggling to think of like a phrase that's so video game beside like a specific video game. Like you can say like game over or something like that, but like a specific video game that has like the lasting power of like in like immediately recognizable of just like, oh yeah, get over here, oh yeah, finish him. Like
in terms of sound bites, the only other thing I can think of is the Mario theme.
Right, but that's music. That's not just like a.
I know, but I'm just saying sound, and I'm saying all sound in general.
Yeah,
like for people who don't know video games, but they know something is from a video game. I can't think. I'm sure there is something. It's just things that are popping to my mind right now. I'm trying to think of like what other bit of either music or sound bite would someone hear, and even if they don't know video games, they know it's from a video game. They know it's from a specific game.
Yeah.
All I can think of is Mario. Mortal Kombat, obviously the Mortal Kombat, it kind of gives it away in the title, but like the fatality thing, like, or get over here, it's ingrained into public psyche. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Into the zeitgeist. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's certainly part of mine.
But that should be a good place to wrap up this episode. Let's go through our social medias and our plugs and whatnot. Andrew, where can everybody find you online, and what would you like to promote?
You can find me personally across the board on social things. I'm trying to be more active on TikTok, which is a lot of fun. It's just Andrew the Kinsey, Kinsey. If you want to follow the Experience Point, and maybe leave an occasional supportive comment to let me know that people are actually watching these things and that I should do more. We're across the board on YouTube and Twitch and Instagram, and all the socials are just at the Experience Point. So TheExpPoint.
All right. And as usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. If you want to email me, you can email me stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can do it a number of ways. You can give it a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcast app you use, because that helps more people find the show, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And I like feeling warm and fuzzy. And of course, you can support it monetarily over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you'll get all the episodes at a higher bit rate a few days earlier and access to a patron exclusive Discord. For $5 a month, you get all of that, plus 2 bonus episodes a month that are about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on topic. And it ranges from ideas of retro magazine reviews, where I take old video game magazines and do reviews of the weird stuff they did back then, or just what games I'm playing currently that I couldn't fit into a new episode. And also now there is a new series, a new show called Still Bonding, where my friend Erica Gwynn from the Monster Madness podcast, we are going through every single James Bond movie and dissecting them all. We're talking about the best, the worst, the problematic, the stuff that surprisingly holds up, everything in between. There's a lot of problematic in the old things. Let's be real.
Do a whole series on just that.
Oh, I mean, you could. It would be insane. But I mean, dude, the first movie, they make up the villain and the femme fatale, and they're white actors who they try to make look Asian. Yeah. There's issues, but you get all that for $5 a month. That's it, $5, and you get all that. But if you are low on funds and you want to support a better cause than myself, go to the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of kids receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So if you want to support them, go to bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Andrew, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, sir.
And I will see you all next time.